Hello, I'm going to record a slow flow sequence, asana sequence, for focusing on the root chakra. And we will start with some centering and grounding, do a bit of breathing practice, a pranayama practice, and I'll show a mudra that can be associated with the root chakra, and we'll go through the flow. So, finding yourself in a comfortable seated position, whatever that means for you in today's body, we're going to start with just noticing what you have physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually happening at this time. So, a bit of a concentration or mindfulness practice to start our grounding. So getting wiggles out however you are situated, using props like blocks underneath your seat. I'll have one handy here that I can demo for a few of our shapes that we use today. So if this is helpful for you right now and you don't have a yoga block, but you want to lift up your hips, that helps to lengthen the spine, release tension out of the groin so the knees can fall out. Maybe a large book, could be a firm pillow, any yoga bolster type situation if you have anything that can be firm enough to help you lift your hips and stay seated. And then, yeah, again, thinking about that lengthened spine, maybe wiggling any wiggles out that would feel good for you, neck, shoulders, toes, fingers, getting energy out that is just extra for you right now. And closing the eyes is always optional. If you feel comfortable in the space where you are right now and want to eliminate those visual distractions, that can be an option. Otherwise, if not, using that idea of focus and concentration, dropping your gaze to a point in front of you and letting it settle there and not noticing anything around the periphery. And then notice your breath. Not worrying about changing it at all. Usually, as soon as we bring our attention to the breath, we automatically start to shift and notice if it's a little bit shallow, breathing up high in the chest, we tend to breathe a little bit longer, deeper, and that's fine. I'm not trying to change or control it at all yet. Noticing the space right at the base of the tailbone. As we're seated, are you able to bring a sense of stabilization, maybe security even, knowing that your physical body is stable, not going to fall over. And then noticing how that impacts any emotional sensations, mental quality of feeling more stable or secure, having a foundation physically, mentally, and emotionally. Our nervous system, our physiology doesn't distinguish between the perception of feeling stable, grounded, secure, safe from the reality of it. So when we put ourselves in positions physically, mentally, emotionally to increase our feelings, our sensations, our perceptions of being safe and grounded and secure and stable, It can help to build that into the nervous system, supporting our mental health, our emotional well-being. It's not overnight. It's not a quick fix, but it's one tool that can help. So lengthening now, bringing a little bit deeper breath into the lungs, maybe softening the belly, letting the lungs expand to their depths on the inhale. And then on the exhale, releasing all the used air. And do that again, this time maybe softening the spaces between the side ribs, letting the lungs expand out to their full capacity. Down, out, and up. And as you inhale, imagine the color red at the base of the spine. And as you exhale, releasing any feelings of tension that are available to be let go of right now. Continuing that deep, lengthened breath, start to bring to mind the sensation of bringing that breath in 3 parts. It's called Durga Pranayama. So as you inhale, you soften the belly, expand the breath all the way to the depths of the lungs below that bottom front rib. And expanding middle part, the middle section, the side ribs, out from the heart and the mid-back. And then the top, the third part, lifting the collarbones, expanding the chest, opening and softening the shoulders on the inhale. And then that exhale is also 3 parts. So lowering the collarbones, releasing the chest, knitting the side ribs back together, and maybe even a light pull of the belly towards the spine at the very base of the exhale. Doing that again. 3 parts for each inhale, 3 parts for each exhale. Going at your pace, whatever is comfortable for you, keeping the mind focused on the breath. If that is not a good anchor for your mind for any reason today, it doesn't matter the reason, perhaps again bringing to mind that color red at the base of the spine, or any other anchor for your mind that helps you to bring in that sensation of stability. If you are practicing the Durga Pranayama, I encourage you to practice about 5 to 6 rounds at your pace. Might be faster or slower than mine, that's fine. And finishing up one last round wherever you are. And then blinking the eyes open, keeping that breath flowing. If you're continuing with Durga Pranayama, that's fine. Otherwise, whatever comfortable breath is for you. We're going to do a Muladhara, the root chakra mudra. So you're going to interlace pinky and ring finger inside the palms so that as you turn the palms together, they're tucked down inside. And then touch the tips of the middle fingers together. And then the index finger and the thumb, they're going to interlace and touch the same thumb to the same finger, but interlocking rings. And then either holding the wrists at the waists or wrist at the waist with the fingers pointing down, indicating that root into the earth. And then just hold here, either eyes open, focused on and concentrating at one spot, or closing the eyes again for 3 more rounds of breath. And typically we practice mudra practices to help that energy flow, the prana, throughout the body for much longer than 3 breaths. Often it's recommended for 5, 10, or 30 minutes. So you can practice that. Use this tool as another practice for your own. Gently, slowly releasing the mudra, wiggling out the fingers. So we're going to now move into some physical movement, some postures, and note that often our psoas muscle, our hip flexors, our quadriceps are often associated with our root chakra. Mostly those are the muscles that help us to flee or fight. So that sense of safety, again, if we know that we need to be moving ourselves out of a sense of danger, a place of danger, those are the muscles that often do it. And so when we are perceiving stress or things unsafe, those muscles tend to get a little tighter. So you'll notice as we move through that we'll focus a bit on those. Any movement that we do, please be sure you take the variation that is working best for you, regardless of what I am demoing, and or choose something completely unrelated that feels good and feels right and feels like a release of tension for your body at the time. So if you're on any kind of proper block, we're going to just kind of move ourselves off of that, get out of the way, and roll up to our tabletop position, which is hands and knees under hips, shoulders stacked on top of wrists. And start just by articulating the spine. So we're going to take an inhale, let the tail rise and the chest come forward, the chin rise, the belly fall into cow pose. Exhale, we're going to push the floor away, round the mid back up towards the ceiling, tuck the chin, tuck the tail, angry cat. At your pace, your breath, inhaling and exhaling, about 2 to 3 rounds. Again, faster or slower than me, does not matter. And then whenever it feels right for you, bringing that spine back to what's called its axial extension. So it's natural neutral curves, curving in at the low back, out a bit at the upper back, curving back in at the cervical spine. Let that spine lengthen, extend from tail through the crown. Bringing that right leg extended back behind you, toes down on the ground. Press the heel towards the wall behind you. Maybe even noticing that you're kind of shifting the hips back a little bit. So feeling opening, perhaps along the bottom of the foot, across the toes, and then in the calf, past the Achilles tendon, and perhaps for some even up into the thigh, the back of the thigh. Come forward, take that same leg, cross it over the left leg. Get that same sensation of kind of pushing the heel away from you, and then notice if you can feel a sensation along the outside of the right hip. If you choose, looking over the left shoulder, maybe even finding the right foot in your gaze. Again, if it feels right for you, and then eventually exhaling will bring all of that back to center. Same thing, left side, left leg extends, foot down, toes down, and then heel pressing towards that wall behind you. There's an excessive amount of sensation that just is not feeling good so that you cannot find a lengthened full inhale and exhale, back off a bit. Let the breath be your guide throughout each of the movements. Inhaling, coming forward, cross left foot over to the right side. And then again, if you choose, gazing over the right shoulder, finding the left foot. And then inhaling everything back to center. So we're keeping the toenail side of the foot down. And if it's comfortable for you, bringing the knees as close together as is comfortable. And then starting to walk the hands back towards your knees, letting the seat start to drop towards the heels. Now for you, you might want to keep more weight forward. Keep the hips hovering over the heels. Or perhaps it's comfortable for you to bring the hips all the way back to the heels. So opening up now along the front of the ankle. And we're going to bring the wrists into play here too. So you can keep the wrists if you're feeling plenty enough sensation with the hands maybe by the knees or the thighs and kind of bringing those shoulders forward so you feel that opening along the inside of the wrist. That's fine, stay there. Could be that you want to play around with turning the fingers out to the sides or perhaps turning the fingers back to point towards the toes and then this time pulling the shoulders back towards. So you're almost coming into an angry cat back. Continuing with the breath here. Releasing any shape at any point once the sensation or the breath, the prana, the energy level is telling you that it's enough. Eventually, we will all come forward, inhaling, bringing the hands down, tuck the toes now into the mat. And then this time, do the same thing. Start to walk back slowly, lowering the hips gently, slowly, until you feel enough sensation where you can still keep the breath flowing, but you can feel that opening and lengthening along the bottom of the foot. Option to reach back and tuck those pinky toes down and in if they're kind of setting out to the side. And if it's available, perhaps coming all the way up to seated on the heels and then breathing through the sensation again, coming out of it as you are ready. So really focusing on the fact that our feet are our foundation when we're standing. So we want to have that energy flowing and have that openness from the foundation, as we talked about in our centering, all the way up through so that our energy can really lengthen out and expand and release tension. Coming forward from there as you're ready, we're going to let those knees fall, move out to the side. Release the hips down towards the heels again, any amount, and then reaching the hands forward, lowering the forehead towards the floor, coming into child's pose. If this is excess amount of sensation for the shoulders, another option is to come with the arms back towards the feet or elbows towards the knees, hands by the head. Choosing any variation for you here, taking another lengthened inhale. Feeling the belly expand against the inner thigh as you bring the breath in, and then exhale, release it all. Inhale, lift the forehead, press into the hands, bringing the arms back. If you're in extended child's pose, you can press back up into tabletop. Moving the hands towards the top of the mat, we're going to start to shift the knees back a bit, lowering the hips so that now you are in a straight line from knees, past the hips, past the shoulders, out through the crown of the head. You still have your natural curves in your spine, but the energy from the tail through the crown of the head is a straight line. You can keep the knees down or float the knees off, press energy out through the heels, hug the quadriceps and the hamstrings to the femur bone. Take a full inhale here, belly button towards the spine. And then as you exhale, little shift of the shoulders forward, squeeze the elbows into the rib cage, lowering the chest all the way down towards the floor. Hands stay under the shoulders, but little bit of, not much weight in the hands as you inhale. And just a baby back bend, lifting the sternum up from the floor. Exhale to release. Inhale and tuck the toes into the mat. Push the floor away. You can either come through tabletop or directly Start to lift the hips, float the knees off the floor, lengthen the legs behind you, coming into downward facing dog. If this doesn't fit for you quite yet, stay in tabletop. If you notice that your heels are maybe 2, 3, 4 inches away from the ground, a couple options are to take a step forward so that you can bring your heels slightly closer to the ground, and or widen your feet out as wide as the mat. Either option, both options together perhaps, will help to release tension off of the wrists, lift energy up through the tailbone. If wrists are still a factor, come back to tabletop, or you can always lower down into dolphin, extending the spine long. Take one more full breath here. Inhale, gaze to the hands, step, walk, or hop your feet forward until you are soft-kneed, forward fold, letting the head hang heavy, releasing tension out of the neck, and being aware that you can bend the knees as much as your hamstring, low back are needed. Taking an inhale, hands to the shins, lengthen the spine, coming into half forward fold, and then exhale. Release it down. Pressing into the feet as your foundation, inhale, lift the torso up, reach the arms to the ceiling, and then exhale, lower the hands back down, bringing the hands on either side of the hips. So coming back to that idea of foundation again, you are welcome to have your feet spread the distance that is comfortable for you. I tend to go with my feet directly underneath the bony part of my pelvis, those hip bones. That's what's comfortable for me. If you prefer feet together or a little bit wider, you find what feels like a firm foundation for you. Notice the big toe ball mound, the baby toe ball mound, and the back center of the heel, and even see if you can lift the toes or gently wiggle the toes off the ground. And then eventually let the toes rest without gripping. Stack the knees over the ankles. Maybe a little bit of the engagement of the quadriceps, so the knees just gently pull up towards the pelvis, and the pelvis is stacked on top of the knees. Think about your bottom front rib. Find that with your thumb, and then the top of your pelvis with your fingers. And imagine you're going to pull those two bony parts together. They're never going to touch, but you're really engaging across what is considered part of your core. And the shoulders stacked over the hips with the shoulder blades melting down towards the back waist. Crown of the head reaching towards the ceiling. Upper arm bones open to the front. Close your eyes and notice how it feels. Should feel really engaged and energized. And then exhale and release. If there's any sensation that does not feel engaged and energized, adjust as you need to for any of those body parts. And then taking an inhale, lift the arms to the ceiling again. Exhale, hands through heart center and come back into your forward fold. Inhale, half lift, hands to the shins. Exhale, deep bend in the knees as much as comfortable for you to bring those hands down to the floor, and then step or hop your feet all the way to the back of the mat, and then lower the knees down if you choose, or keep the knees lifted for your version of plank pose. And then again, bring that idea of pulling the bottom front rib down to the top of the pelvis in this plank shape. Taking an inhale. Press the shoulders forward. Exhale, squeeze the elbows in, lower all the way down to the mat. And then on your inhale, you can either repeat that baby cobra, or if it's comfortable in your body, extend the arms, lifting up into high cobra, maybe even bringing the gaze up if that's appropriate for you. Exhale, release it all back down. Inhale to tuck the toes into the mat. You can push the mat away, stay right here in tabletop, or return to your downward facing dog. Full lengthen, inhale and exhale. Pulling the shoulder blades towards the back waist, opening up those upper arm bones again. One more breath here. And then inhale, bring your gaze to your hands. Step, walk or hop the feet behind the palms. Knees soft into forward fold on the exhale. Inhale, half lift, extend the spine. And then as you exhale, lower the elbows towards the knees. We're going to go into a version of chair pose. Now, for me, I feel a better foundation. I feel more comfortable if my feet are closer together or even touching. You play around with it. It's up to you where the distance of your feet are. You're also welcome to keep your elbows right here. Regardless of where your upper body and arms go, think about that tailbone really having a heavy weight on it. But at the same time, you're keeping the spine, again, in its natural curves. So just because our tailbone has a weight on it, we're not tucking the tailbone down and in and really rounding the back. We're keeping that back in its natural curves, but a big weight on the tailbone, dropping our hips as much as is comfortable for us. Notice if you can see your toes beyond your knees. If your knees are way forward of your toes, see if you can just shift it back a little bit. If you're lifting the chest, you still have that engagement across the front of the abdomen. And then option, lift the hands towards shoulder height, arms out in front of you. Gaze at your fingertips. Hold for a breath. And then exhale, we're going to release, step our right, keep our right foot forward, step your left foot back, hands towards the floor if that's comfortable for you, or hands on the thigh to get you down there. And then release the left knee down to the ground. Low crescent lunge. So I talked about those hip flexors and that psoas muscle on the front of the left thigh. Notice that sensation. And at the same time, keep those fingertips just lightly on the ground or on the right thigh. Or if you've got a block or some sort of prop, you can bring the ground up your hands that way as well. Now, think about pulling that right hip a bit more towards midline so that the right hip isn't sassing out to the side a whole lot. Trying to keep that pelvis a little bit more centered. Take one more breath here. And then on your exhale, you're going to shift those hips back, lengthen the right leg. Toes can stay down or toes can come up. Perhaps even sliding that heel forward to lengthen along the hamstring. Hands can again stay on the floor or on the blocks. And think a bit now about pulling the left hip down and forward, right hip back and in. Half splits, one more breath. Shifting forward on the inhale, that right foot comes back down to the ground as your foundation. Tuck the left toes in, float that left knee up, and then turn the left toes out to the side so the foot lands flat. Hands to the hips, inhale, lift up, and notice that you still have a bend in your front knee. Coming into Virabhadrasana 1, Warrior 1. You're welcome to keep your hands on your hips, kind of encouraging the hips to gently move towards the top edge of your mat, but not forcing it by any means. And for some of us, the hips today might be staying a little bit more towards an angle. Just noticing. Inhale, if you'd like, you can reach the arms up. Ears between the upper arms, gaze towards where the wall meets the ceiling, or gaze towards where the floor meets the wall. Another breath here. Exhale again, hands come to the hips. Come to the ball mound of that left foot. All of your weight comes into the front foot. Take an inhale. Press off that left foot. Land it with the toes right inside the right foot. So we're inside the right foot. You're welcome to stay right here. This is a version of a balanced pose. Might be the best one for you today. Another option is to turn that left knee out to the side and rest the heel against the ankle of the right leg. Next option, maybe you slide that foot up to the calf. And then if it's appropriate for you, perhaps the bottom of the left foot to the inside of the right thigh. But imagine that the right hip, again, is not sassing out, keeping a lengthened line. So if you're really shifting over to get that left foot up to the inner thigh, drop it down a bit. And then from there, whatever expression for your branches that feel good and right for you at this time. Could be reaching those arms out wide or out high. Could be hands together at heart center. Hands can stay on the hips. Or if you'd like, returning to the mudra that we started with at the beginning of class. We're going to hold here for 3 cycles of breath, releasing as you need to, relaxing those shoulders, breathing. And then eventually, as you finish with that 3rd and final cycle, gently, slowly releasing. If it feels good for you, you can release the right ankle, circle it out, shake it out. And then we'll all meet together again at the top of the mat, taking an inhale, lift the arms up. Exhale, release forward into that forward fold again. Inhale, half lift, hands to the shins. Deep bend in the knees. Exhale to bring the hands down to the floor. And then step or walk your feet again to the back, either lowering the knees down and coming into a knees down plank. Another option, if you are feeling sensation in your wrists and shoulders that aren't comfortable for you, is to bring your plank upright, either arms down by the sides or arms out in front of you, feeling that same engagement along the front of the body. Whichever variation you're choosing, take one more breath. Exhale, shift the shoulders forward, lower into your chaturanga, belly down to the floor, and then your variation or version of a back extension, either down low in a baby cobra, up high with the arms extended in high cobra, or floating the tops of the thighs in upward facing dog. And then our exhale will either be lowering down to the floor, coming to a tabletop, or just shifting the hips directly up into your downward facing dog. Inhale, gaze towards the hands, step or walk the feet forward. Again, now landing in your forward fold, knees bent as much as is comfortable for you. We're going to go directly from here into that chair pose. So if you know that you want to adjust the width of your feet, go ahead and take that time right now. Inhale, knees bend, elbows come up, land the elbows on the knees. Option to stay here. Think about that weighted tailbone, back lengthened, chest is lifting if you choose, and then again, arms straight out in front of you. Notice if you can see the tips of your toes beyond your knees. Take another breath here. And then exhale, release everything down. Hands either to the blocks or to the mat in front of you. Your left foot stays forward, your right foot steps back. Hands can come to the top of the left thigh if you prefer. Lowering that right knee down slowly and carefully, untucking the right toes. Feeling that opening on the front of the right thigh. And again, notice what's happening with that pelvis. So if it is helpful for you to imagine that left hip kind of coming in towards center, go ahead and do that. Take another lengthened inhale. And as you exhale, hips shift back. You're going to lengthen that left leg. Toes can stay down. Slide the heel forward if you choose. Toes can come up. And then your right hip is coming parallel to the top edge of the mat, just as your left hip. So the whole pelvis is parallel to the top edge of the mat. Inhaling, gaze towards the toes. And then your exhale lowers that left foot down to the mat. Inhale to float the right knee up. Let those right toes turn out at the side so that the foot can come flat down to the floor. Hands to the hips. Inhale and lift up. Notice how it feels on this side. It might be that for you, you want to have heel to heel alignment. That might feel comfortable for you. For me, I like having my feet almost out to the edges of the mat, left foot close to the left edge, right foot close to the right edge. a little bit wider base. And then lowering the pelvis again as you bend into that front knee, noticing how much on this side the pelvis wants to come towards the top of the mat. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less than the other side. Just noticing. If you choose, arms coming up towards the ceiling, shoulder blades though going down towards the back waist. Breathe. And then exhale, release the hands again to the hips. Come to the ball mound of the right foot. Weight comes into the left foot as your foundation. Inhale to take a big step forward. And the right toes land just inside the left foot. All the same options on this side. You choose. The right knee can come out to the right side, heel on the ankle or to the calf. Keeping that left side of the body and as much of a line as works in your body. If you want, right heel can come up to the inner thigh or stay at the calf or on the floor. Whatever expression of arms, of branches feels good in your tree. Feeling the foundation. Notice if you can feel the sensation of staying rooted and strong like a tree. 3 more breaths. Slowly, carefully, gently exhale, release. We're back to standing at the top of the mat. You're going to take an inhale, lift the arms. As you exhale, take a big step out with the right foot facing the long edge of the mat. Taking an inhale, reach the arms out towards the edges of the room, fingertips wide, energy out through the fingertips. Toes are slightly out, the heels slightly in towards each other, and then dropping a weight from that tailbone again, inhaling, lift the sternum towards the ceiling, baby back bend. Notice on the baby back bend in this shape, if you can feel even just a little bit of opening, again, along the front of that pelvis, top of the thigh. Exhale the hands back to the hips. Soften the knees gently so they're not locked out. Shifting the hips back, hinging from the hips, starting to lower the torso down towards the floor. Releasing the hands if that feels right anywhere along the legs. Releasing the top of the head to the floor, wide-legged forward fold. Pretty deep bend in the knees. Inhale, start to round the spine up, 1 vertebrae at a time, letting the arms dangle, lifting up slowly until the shoulders come up, front of the head last, and the shoulders melt up towards the waist. Okay, so now this time, your left foot is going to stay about parallel to the back edge of the mat, not exactly for everybody's body, but about that. And the right toes are going to point towards the right short edge of the mat. About lining up the right heel with the mid arch of the left foot, somewhere in there. And then from that foundation, you adjust your ankles, the angle of them, the width of them, the placement of your feet as feels good and right in your body. We're going to, this time, encourage the hips to stay towards the long edge of the mat, that direction anyway, and then start to bend that right knee towards its baby toe. Arms can stay on the hips, or you can extend the arms out long from the shoulders, gaze over that front middle finger of the right hand. Virabhadrasana 2, breathe here. And then inhale, lengthen that leg long. Exhale, shift the left hip towards the left wrist. Reach the right arm out long. And then without backing out that front knee, landing the right hand anywhere along the thigh, shin, or any type of prop that you have, perhaps placing the prop inside the right foot. And then encouraging this time now the chest also to stay open and lifted towards the long edge of the mat or even up towards the ceiling. The left hand can come up towards the ceiling or to the hip or wrap around behind your low back to encourage you to keep that right shoulder coming forward, left shoulder staying back, breathing here. And then inhale, we're going to press into both feet. Lift the torso up. If you have the bind, keep it there. Exhaling back into that lunge on the right leg, encouraging the right knee over its baby toe again. And this inhale, lift the right arm, side bend over to the left, coming into reverse warrior. Gaze either down at the heel or up at the right hand. Breathe here for 2 more breaths. Inhale, extend everything long. Reach the arms out wide. And then exhale, we're going to, I'll move the prop here so you can see better. We're going to bring the weight into the left foot. So I just naturally kind of shifted my left foot closer in towards center. You might have noticed that. You can do that same thing. We're going to extend the right leg long. And then you can keep hands on the thigh, drop maybe forearms to the thigh. Perhaps you bring the hands down to a block. You're starting to shift this left hip out to the left side. If it feels right for you, perhaps you bring the hands down on either side of that left foot and then land your seat on the left heel. And then your right foot stays long, toes pointed up towards the ceiling or pointed long. If you have the hands down, this is an option again for the block. If you want to challenge your balance, one more time again today, staying close to the ground, you can release one hand either from the prop or from the floor. Gaze on something that's not moving, or perhaps both hands. And then just hold it for a second or two, however's working in your body. Exhale to release that. When you are coming up from this deep, deep lunge, take an inhale. Push into the floor with the hands, extend that leg long, lower the right foot, all the way back up to center. Starting everything to the other side. Inhale, relax. Arms open, tailbone weighted and heavy. Sternum lifting towards the sky. Breathe here. Exhale the hands to the hips. Shift the hips back and hinge forward. Lowering into forward fold with softened knees. This time, play around with the feet. Notice how it feels when you kind of turn the toes in and the heels out. Or maybe you keep your feet parallel to the short edges of the mat. Just play around and notice the different sensations and where you feel the sensations in the legs. And breathe here. Inhale, half lift. Soften the knees again. Hands to the hips. Float all the way up to standing. This time, your right foot stays about parallel to the short edge of the mat. Left toes turn out, pointing towards that side of the mat, the short edge of the mat. And then notice what's happening with the hips. Adjust the angles of your ankles and your feet as needed so that as you exhale, lowering that left knee down into a lunge, you're feeling opening and sensations of releasing, but not pain or any twinges that feel really uncomfortable. Releasing the arms out from the shoulders, gaze over that left middle finger, encouraging that left knee to stay towards its baby toe. Inhale, extend that front leg long. Exhale, shift the right hip towards the right wrist. Reach that left arm out and long, and then let it land wherever it may, all the way thigh, shin, perhaps a block, perhaps to the floor or ankle. And then as you encourage right hip to stay lifted and open, the chest to stay lifted and open, that right arm can either reach towards the ceiling, stay on the hip, or around the low back. If you're starting to notice that really you're coming almost more into a forward fold version, then just lift that hand up the leg a little bit further to give more space and open up the side. Take another breath here. And then your inhale, press into both feet firmly, lift all the way up. If you have that bind, keep the right hand behind you. As you exhale, again, that left knee is coming towards its baby toe into a lunge, and then the left arm reaches up and side bend over to the right. Gaze either down at that heel or up at the left hand. Hold here and breathe. Inhale, extend that front leg long. Bring both hands to the right thigh. Again, if you want to narrow your stance, bring that right foot in a little bit. That might be more comfortable as you start to bend into the right knee this time. Lengthening the left leg long, shooting that right hip back. Toes can stay down or toes come up. You can keep with the hands there. You can bring the elbows there if you have your props and you want to put the blocks on either side of the foot. Or if you want to bring the hands down to the ground and perhaps lower the seat to the heel. It's also helpful to think about really hugging the femur of the left leg with the quadricep muscles, really pointing those toes towards your left shoulder, engaging at the center, at your core. And then perhaps one hand releases. As you keep your gaze steady on a point not moving, perhaps the other hand releases. Just options, not have-tos. Hold for one more breath. Exhale to release. Again, if you're all the way down in this deep lunge, your hands are going to become part of your feet, your foundation system. So take an inhale, push the floor away with your hands, lift yourself up. And then from center, feet foundation, as your foundation, inhale and lift. Way to standing. Taking an inhale, start to toe heel your feet together to the center. Toes pointing center. Find again that foundation with your feet and then stacking of the joints and breathe. Exhale. Blink the eyes open if they have been closed. We're going to have the left foot become your foundation. One last standing balance pose. Knee is soft, so it's not locked out on the left side. The right toes could be just kickstand down back behind you. This might be where you stay. It could be that you float the heel up back behind you. Foot is flexed, heel coming up towards the seat. Hands can stay either on the hips or if it feels appropriate in your body, either using your hand or if you have access to a strap or a scarf or a necktie, looping the strap, whatever variation you have, around the front of the right ankle and then holding the ends of it in your right hand. Pointing the knee down towards the floor, flexing the ankle, and then think about perhaps just noticing the change in sensation if you push the right hip forward. If you have a chair, piece of furniture, or a wall, left hand on that prop can also help to keep the balance steady. Exhale and release, drop the foot. Come over to the other side. Knee is soft. You can keep the left toes kickstand back behind you. If you're going to kickstand the left toes, one cue that might be helpful is to keep the knees together so you're kind of still getting more of that opening along the front of the left thigh. Otherwise, kicking the left heel all the way up back behind you towards your seat. Remember, it is not always the exact same between both sides of the body, so it may be that on the right side, something felt accessible or not accessible that is different on the left side. So the left foot flexing at the ankle, left knee pointing down towards the floor, perhaps the left hip shifting energetically, pulling forward. So it's a movement that nobody watching could even see, but you can feel as you push that left hip forward. Take one more breath here. And then exhale, release it down. Taking and bringing your feet actually back towards the center of your mat. Take an inhale, reach the arms up, lengthen towards the ceiling. Exhale, soften the knees, bend forward, come into a forward fold. Inhale, extend the spine, half fold. And then this time on the exhale, deep bend in the knees, bring the hands down to the ground. Lower the knees, bring them out wide edges of the mat, and then seat back towards the heels, coming back into Balasana, child's pose. Forehead down towards the ground, arms in whichever variation feels good for you at this time. Perhaps maybe now exploring a different variation than what we did at the beginning of class. Inhale, half lift. And then start to pull forward. Drawing those knees back together, coming all the way with your seat towards the center of the mat, lowering the seat down, and then extending the legs long. So you have your toes up towards the ceiling. Find that feeling of stability, that foundation, both of the sits bones, those points at the base of your pelvis, and the energy of the tailbone firmly rooted onto the ground. From there, your spine lengthens and lifts. Now again, if you're not feeling that sensation of the spine lifting, bring that prop, whatever you may have, back behind you, lift your seat up onto the prop, and notice then if the spine can lengthen. Notice then how it feels to lengthen along the back of the legs. Whichever variation you're in, think about really pulling those toes towards you. Now you might notice with my hips lifted, I'm trying to keep my knees a little bit bouncy, a little bit soft, not locked out. Sternum lifting towards the toes as the toes lift towards the sternum. Depending on the length of your arms and the length of your torso, if your fingers are able to touch the ground, whether you're on a prop or not, really use the energy of pulling those upper arms back behind a bit, pulling the bottom front ribs down to the top of the pelvis, really engaged, feeling it all along the front side of the body. Taking one more inhale here. I'm going to remove myself from my prop. We're going to exhale, start to now keep that same length in the spine, in the torso, and walk yourself forward over your legs, pausing and waiting when you feel your body say, that's far enough. Your hamstrings, your low back, knees, whatever part of your body is saying that's far enough, we're going to listen to it. Just wait there. Give it another 2 breaths. And then as you feel maybe just a little bit of a release, you may or may not. If you do, perhaps then allowing now the spine to round forward, letting a little bit of the tension again out of the back of the neck, Shoulder blades and shoulders releasing away from the ears. Inhale, half lift. Walk those hands all the way back. All right. Finding your way all the way down on your back. Whatever way makes sense for you. Could be rolling over to one side, bringing yourself down, and then onto your back. It could be hands behind the thighs. It could be that you turn it into a bit of a core strengthener, lowering the torso away from the fronts of the thighs. Releasing the back of the head. Noticing the sensation of all of the muscles on the back side of the body now being supported. They don't have to hold you upright. They can just release. Let the body, let the nervous system feel that. Drawing the feet as close to the hips as is comfortable for you. So that could be whatever your knees, ankles, hips, or low back are saying. Drawing them as close as that is comfortable for you. Taking an inhale to prepare. Press into the bottoms of the feet. On an exhale, press the low back down into the mat as if you're imprinting all of the vertebrae on the mat. Next inhale, float the hips. Any amount, doesn't matter how high they come. Imagine the knees like laser beams trying to point straight forward. Take another breath here. Exhale and release. Let's do that one more time. Inhale to prepare. Exhale, press the low back into the mat. Inhale, press into the bottoms of the feet, float the hips. Hold and breathe. Again, you'll notice opening up along the front of those thighs, the space between where our torso and our legs are attached. And then exhale, one vertebrae down at a time, slowly releasing. Then inhale, your arms out as wings, out from the shoulders. And then exhale, we're going to lower both knees over to the left. Now, if you have any sort of pillows or blankets or towels that you want to layer underneath the left thigh and or between the thighs, and that feels better for you, go ahead and do that. Noticing if you're able to keep that right shoulder and shoulder blade down on the mat. If not, it might be helpful to then have some props underneath that left thigh so that the knees don't have to reach so far over that they're pulling the right shoulder up. So play around with that, see what you have for options and what feels best in your body. If it feels good, go ahead and turn the chin over to the right, opening up into this twist and breathing. One more lengthen inhale, flowing into lengthen exhale. Inhale, chin back to center. Float the knees up. Pause for an exhale. Inhale to prepare. And then exhale, coming into your supine twist on the other side. Knees over to the right. Noticing how it feels on this side and if you need to adjust anything on this side compared to the other side so that you're feeling that ringing out right across the abdomen. Left shoulder stays down. Chin can come to the left if you like. Inhale, chin towards the ceiling. Let the knees follow. Pause on the exhale. Inhale to prepare. And then your exhale, we're going to come into a final rest pose. So right now I'm demoing Savasana, which the legs extended, letting maybe even the toes kind of fall open to the side, taking up space with the legs so that the joints all the way up to the low back can release. Upper arms open towards the ceiling, hands a few inches from the hips, and then turning the palms so that it can be grounded with the hands down on the ground. If this doesn't feel good for you for any reason, final rest can be taken on your side body, either side. It could be taken on your belly. It could be a seated position. Could be seated with your back against the wall or a chair. Anything that helps you fully become restful, to become restored. Bringing your mind back to that anchor, whether it's the color red or your breath, or as we finish class, choosing an affirmation that might resonate with you, such as I am stable, I am steady. Inhaling, I am stable, I am steady. Or, in this moment, I am safe. Inhaling in this moment, exhaling, I am safe. Staying in your final rest for as long as you like. If you are not ready to move on to the rest of your day, continue where you are. If you are ready to move on, I'll just give some cues to bring small movements back into the body, starting with fingers and toes, letting that move into wrists and ankles, elbows and knees, hips and shoulders, perhaps a long full body stretch, reaching the arms over the head, pointing the toes away from you, pulling apart from the middle. And then on your exhale, rolling over to one side, whichever side is calling to you. And then inhale. As you're ready, push the floor away and up to a seated position. Whatever is a comfortable seated position for you at this time, just notice if it feels different than when we came here at the beginning of class. Hands can be palms down on the legs, or you can return to the Muladhara Mudra if that feels right for you too. Taking a lengthened inhale, lift the sternum, lower the shoulder blades, pull the bottom front ribs down to the top of the pelvis. And bring a moment of gratitude, perhaps thinking of those ancients in India that discovered the practice of yoga, and gratitude for their willingness to pass it on generations over generations and across the world, that we could benefit today. And then noting anything else that brings a thought of gratitude for you today. Anything else in your life. Going forward with a sense of stability, bringing that sensation of your central nervous system being rested, restored, and stable, so that you can respond mentally and emotionally and energetically in any situation with that same sense of stability for yourself and perhaps for others. Exhale to lower the chin. Om Shanti, peace. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. A fabulous rest of your day.